Hi everyone. So for my story listening experience, I used All Native Land from the Mission Songs project shared by Jesse Lode. In this reflection, I want to highlight what I learned about myself as a listener and about inclusive practice. The first time I listened, I realized that my typical university listening is very task-centered. I usually make notes, identify key facts, and consider what information I can use for this experience. However, I try to move away from that model and incorporate concepts from theory, the pedagogy of listening, and the four levels of listening. Through theory, I attempted to listen deeply and respectfully. I slow myself down and let Jesse tell his story about without immediately analyzing or judging him. I watched the video more than once. The first time I mainly focused on the information. The second time, I paid more attention to Jesse as a speaker, including his tone, emotions, poses, and what he was trying to communicate. This also relates to Renati pedagogy of listening. According to Renati, listening takes time and requires openness to others' perspective and the suspensions of judgment and prejudice. I tried to do this by noticing what was happening in my own mind while Jesse was speaking instead of automatically accepting my first interpretation. When considering the four levels of listening, I realized that initially I listened through what I already knew. I knew a little about discrimination, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander history, and land rights. This meant I automatically connected Jesse words with information I had already learned. During my second listening, I tried to become more receptive to a perspective that might challenge my existing understanding. My initial assumption was Aboriginal land rights was mainly connected to key events and iconic figures like Eddie and Mabel. Story listening challenged this because I realized these histories are also personal and connected to individuals, families, and experiences across generation. This was different from learning Aboriginal history from a book because I was listening to someone speaking about his own family. One challenge with deep listening was wanting to quickly connect Jesse's story to things I already knew. I had to remind myself that this could cause me to interpret his experience through my assumption. Venardi explains that listening involved being open to differences and appreciating another person's interpretation. This made me realize that I don't always need to have a response in order to listen. One of the most impactful moment was hearing that Jesse's grandfather and other Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander men requested fair wages and better living conditions. This made me feel uneasy and sad because they should be fundamental, right? I was even more affected when Jesse explained that his grandfather wasn't angry or resentful in the song. His wish was simply for his own native land. I originally assumed that a story about injustice would be expressed by mainly through anger. Recognizing this made me realize I was placing my expectations onto another person's experience. The story showed me that people may communicate experiences of injustice differently from what I expect. My understanding of race and privilege also influenced my listening. I am listening to an Aboriginal family's experience from an outsider perspective, so I can say that I fully understand what Jesse or his family experienced. VAEAI emphasize listening to Aboriginal community members and respecting how they share their cultural knowledge. This reminded me that respectful story listening means allowing Aboriginal people to tell their own story rather than assuming I can speak for them. This reflection has shifted my thinking about inclusion and as a future early childhood teacher. Previously, I mainly considered inclusion as providing access and fair treatment for all children. I still believe this is important, but now I understand that inclusion also requires listening to how children and families understand their identity and experiences. The EYOF V2 identifies secure, respectful, and reciprocal relationship, partnerships, and respect for diversity as important principle for early childhood practice. Deep listening support this principle because I can't form a genuine partnership with a family if I make assumption instead of listening. Listening also support belonging. Granadi explains that listening gives visibility and value to person being listened to. Children and families should not need to hide aspects of themselves to fit into an early childhood setting. Their abilities, cultures, languages, experiences, and family structures should be recognized and valued. Story listening can also help me acknowledge children and family with special rights and advocate for inclusive practices instead of immediately deciding what support they need. I can first listen to their perspective. This shift my role from speaking for them to working with them. In my future teaching practice, I can provide opportunities for children and family to share their experiences in different way. I can listen without interrupting, pay attention to verbal and non-verbal communication, ask respectful questions, and reflect on my assumptions before making decisions. To sum up, our native land showed me that story listening is not passive. It requires patience, openness, emotional awareness, and critical reflection. Most importantly, I learned that inclusive practice begins with recognizing that my perspective is only one way of seeing things. As a future teacher, I want children and families to feel not only included but genuinely heard, respected, and valued.